All right, guys, in this video today I'm going to review with you commands. Specifically, we're going to talk about two commands. Now, normally when we have a verb form that we go over, we're going to go over the yo form, the to form, ele, usted, and on. But here we're just going to focus on our to form, affirmative and negative ways of forming these commands. So we've done a lot with commands already. We got usted, got ustedes. Depending on where you are right now, we may not have done nosotros or vosotros, but at this point, because we've learned about the subjunctive and the conjugations, this is actually going to be really easy to review. So we're now starting off with two commands. Just remember how this is formed. It is basically the affirmative commands. I usually abbreviate it with a little plus sign there, but our mandatos affirmativos, familiar, again, familiares, informales, these are formed by that when we actually do a normal conjugation, back to that present tense indicative conjugation, whatever the conjugation was here is probably our command form for this. Again, with some exceptions that we'll go over in a moment. But we've got, when we are doing, our normal, let's say it's an AR verb. With our AR verb, we've got, say it's hablar, we would conjugate it. Hablo, and tú hablas. And even though we are making a to command, we are not using that form. We're going to use the form that ends up here, which is habla. Now the circle looks a little kind of interfering a little bit, but whatever the conjugation is right here, that is the one we're going to use. So it's pretty basic. It's essentially for AR and ER verbs, it's the infinitive minus the R. If we had blah written out here, we just get rid of the R and we'd have our conjugation. But we're going to have problems if we go into an IR verb. That won't work. But if we got comer, come, which is the form that would show up right here, come. But if we get to escribir, it will not work here. We have to really go to that third person singular form because it's an IR verb. So this form right here for escribir is escribe. Now, it's escribe. That is not an accent mark. Kind of looks like it, but escribe is that form that would show up where we have got habla right here. This is where come would be. This is where escribe would be. This is where almost all of our conjugations from the affirmative to command come from, whatever this third person singular form. Now, there are going to be exceptions to it, and we're going to talk about those right now. So, as I said, these affirmative commands is only for affirmative commands. So when we go into our next thing, we're going to talk about our irregular commands. Our irregular commands that are informal, affirmative, they spell out it's Vin Diesel has 10 weapons. You remember that? It was the Ben, the, Ben, the, Sal, As, sorry, the button keeps messing me up. As, Ten, Be, Bon, Se. So, Ben, di, sal, as, ten, be, pon, se. Sorry, it looks a little bit sloppy, but I think you get the point. Now, this is ben means come. It's coming from the verb venir, from venir. But again, this is only to say, come here. Ben aquí, ben acá. It is not the negative form, so we can't put no in front of this. It's a whole different conjugation. We get to the negatives with two commands. This comes from decir. Sal comes from salir. Haz comes from hacer. Ten is from tener. You might hear it with a lot of the tener idioms like ten cuidado. Ve is from ir. Pon is from poner. And se is from ser. So normally, again, we would normally just go to what is in this box right here? What is in that third person singular box from our present tense indicative conjugation, like habla, mira, busca, come, vende, bebe, escribe, vive. You know, we have whatever this is, but we've got 8 major exceptions right here where they don't follow that pattern. Now, these are all for the affirmative commands. So, irregular commands, remember, Vin Diesel has 10 weapons. You can kind of go around to this here and you can see it spells that out, sort of. You know, with a little bit of imagination, you can see how this is going to be, you know, Vin Diesel has 10 weapons. Okay, this is the biggest stretch right here. Weapons, weapons. But still, I think it works pretty well. I'm going to move on now to negative commands. Now, negative commands, again, usually kind of shorthand, just a little minus sign. These, all it means is we're saying no, don't do this. You know, don't eat lunch before I get there. Don't study without me. You know, don't watch that until I get home. But it's the don't in front of a verb. So that's a negative command. It's not like it's got some sort of negative connotation. Just don't do that. And it's very simple now that you know how to conjugate the subjunctive, because it's essentially, if you just know this rule, it's no plus the to form of the present subjunctive, which I'll just shorthand it as subjunctive. But when I say that, I mean present tense of the subjunctive, which is formed, if you want to go back to our normal rules, you know, it's the yo form, yo. We've got the O at the end of the word, and you drop that O at the end of the word, and then you add the opposite ending. So if we had a verb like tener, you know, it becomes tengo. We're gonna, as it says here, to drop the O. So we're gonna get rid of that O, and we're going to have T-E-N-G. It is from tener, which is an ER verb, and it's an ER verb, and we're going to get the opposite ending. That is an A. And since we're in the to form of this, to form of the subjunctive, then we also add S. So our negative conjugation for this would be no tengas. No and tengas. That's the negative to command. Now the affirmative is completely different. So just, you got to treat this as a separate conjugation, because the affirmative and the negative commands for familiar commands, informal commands, to commands, which are all this words, same words for the same exact, you know, command, the same form, those are formed completely different. So no plus yo form drop O opposite ending, just like you do in the present subjunctive. There's always going to have an S at the end. And then the affirmative, that's just that third person singular, the stuff I showed you from earlier in the video. So that's our two commands. Again, I'll just do a couple examples with you before we move on. I'll try to write these out. So here, let's go with the verb. Let's go with the basic one, which is say mirar to start off. So mirar, if you want to tell somebody to look, you know, look at that. Mira. Mira, you know, look. you don't want them to look, we'll have no, and this is when we go the different form. The yo form, drop O, opposite ending, and we have an ES at the end. It's an AR verb, so we have an E, the opposite ending, and then S. It only happens with the negative commands. These are for the affirmative, okay? Now let's do another verb. We'll go with an AR verb still, but we'll do buscar. See if you remember something that's special about this one. When we have buscar, we're going to use busca, and then, which is pretty basic, right? Third person singular, that's not so hard. But when we get to the negative, we have to do that yo form, drop the O, opposite ending. But hopefully you recognize that this is a CAR verb, a car verb. So that means we also have to spell change, just like we do in the present subjunctive, and then the opposite ending and an S. So C becomes QU for a car verb. Let's do a ER verb here. Comer, going back to our earlier example, but come, third person singular form. When we go to the negative, no más comas. Opposite ending is an A because it's an ER verb. Okay, now let's do a couple of those irregular ones. Now, we can go irregular either way because there are some, if it's irregular in the subjunctive, we might have an irregular subjunctive command, so it'd make it a -2 command that's irregular, or we could have one of those Vin Diesel words. So I'll start off with Vin himself, venir. So venir is one of the Vin Diesel ones. So we can't just, if we're following the rules that these do, it'd be viene, but it doesn't. It's one of the irregulars. Just got to remember what that one is, and it's ven, come. Negative form, yo form of venir is vengo, drop O. The opposite ending is an A, and you have to be S at the end, no vengas. Then let's do a couple more. Dar. Dar is actually regular here. Third person singular form is da. But when we go to the negative, this is one of the ones where you go to the yo form, and it would be doy. But we can't drop the O of the ending since it's not there. Doy, D-O-Y, doesn't end in O, so we drop the O, or we just have a wholly irregular form because if there's no O to drop. And then let's do a verb like ir. Irregular in both forms, be, and you have to remember this is from the weapons of Vin Diesel has 10 weapons, right? The bepones. It's not really not the greatest one, but still works. So be, it's irregular, and then we also have it's boy in the yo form, V-O-Y. We can't drop the O of the ending, so we know that's how we know it's an irregular one, which becomes vayas. There you have it. So hopefully this made some sense. Again, we've learned this a while ago, but I just wanted to review it as we're going over commands right now. We're going to get into vosotros and nosotros, and so in doing so, we're also going to review some of the other ones, the usted, ustedes, and what we did here, tu, informal, and familiar. Bueno, adiós.